DIY with Nancy. Today I'm going to share my recipe for my quick and easy pumpkin pie bars. Perfect for Thanksgiving, a Halloween potluck party, or even a treat for your family at home. So stay with me and watch how to make my pumpkin pie bars step by step. Let's get started with the first step. I have an 8x8 square baking dish and I have 1 teaspoon of unsalted butter at room temperature. I'm taking a pastry brush and just brushing the butter all around the edges and the bottom of my square baking dish. Now I have the dish buttered. I have a piece of parchment paper which I measured just on the outside of my baking dish. It's a 10 by 10 piece of parchment paper. I've placed it inside the baking dish and I'm just pressing it down, and you can see that the edges of the parchment paper are sticking out of the edges of the baking dish, and it's just a lot easier to remove the pumpkin pie bars once they're done, and it's also easy to place the base. So I'm going to set that aside and move on to the next step. Next, in this bowl, I'm going to prepare the base and the topping for the pumpkin pie bars. I'm starting with 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. To that, I'm adding 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and next I'm adding 1/2 cup of brown sugar. Now I've packed my brown sugar in my 1/2 cup, and I'm just going to use my hands to loosen up the sugar to avoid there being any balls of sugar or clumps of sugar. Now I'm just going to take a wooden spoon and combine the mixture. Now this is going to be the topping and the base. And when I say the base, it's the crust and the bottom of the pumpkin bars. And I just want to combine this well before I add my next ingredient. And the last ingredient is 1/2 cup of unsalted butter that I've melted, and I'm placing it in the bowl, and then I'm just going to stir it to combine, and that's going to form the base as well as the crumble topping. So I'm going to stir it to combine, and I'll show you what it looks like once it comes together. Now my crumble is ready. It's nice and crumbly, but it's also going to serve as the base for the pumpkin pie bars. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. So I'm going to use 1/2 for the base and 1/2 for the topping. So I'm going to just set this aside for a second, and I'm going to get my prepared baking dish that I placed butter and the parchment paper. And next I'm going to place 1/2 onto the bottom. And I'm just going to pour it right in, just using my spoon. I'm just going to eyeball it, about 1/2. That looks like, there, that's 1/2. Just a little bit more. And I'm going to now, you can see it's covered the whole bottom of my dish. And to firm up the crust, I'm going to use my pastry scraper. It has a flat bottom edge. If you have something else around the kitchen, another tool, by all means, go ahead and use it. So once the base is firm and flat, you're ready to move on to the next step. But I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like once it's finished. And here's the crust for the pumpkin pie bars. And I'm just going to set it aside and move on to the next step. Now moving on to preparing the filling for the pumpkin pie bars. I'm using pumpkin pie filling, not puree. And the reason I'm using the filling is because it already has the sugar and the spices. I don't need to add any of that, so it's just a lot easier. So I'm going to place 2 cups of pumpkin pie filling in the bowl. Now I have my pumpkin pie filling. I'm going to add 1 egg. It's very minimal ingredients for the filling, so it's a lot easier to make. And I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now that's all the ingredients you'll need for the filling. Now all I need to do is take my whisk it together. Your filling is ready. All you need to do is combine it. See how easy it was for the filling? That's why I like to use the pumpkin pie filling. It already has the sugar and the spices and all that. It's just less ingredients to add. So I'm just going to stir it to combine. And it's combined, and now we're ready to move on to the next step. And for the next step, I'm going to take the pumpkin pie mixture and pour it on top of the crust. At this point, you want to make sure you have your oven preheated to 375 degrees. Now once I've poured my pumpkin mixture in, all I need to do is just take a spatula, spread it out evenly towards the edges and the corners, and once I have that done, give it a little shake, flatten it out, and we're ready to move on to the next step. Now for the last and final step, I'm going to take the other half of the crumble that we set aside. So I've reserved half of the crumble, and I used half of it for the base, which is the crust in the bottom of the pumpkin pie bars. And then now what I'm going to do is just drizzle it on top, and I'm going to make sure it's completely coated where I don't see the pumpkin pie filling. So I'm going to coat it completely, and then once that's done, it's ready to go into the oven. All done. It's ready to go into the oven. I'm going to bake it at 375 degrees for 35 minutes. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's out of the oven. Here it is. It's been about 35 minutes out of the oven. Now I'm going to let the pumpkin pie bars just cool for about half an hour or so, and then I'm going to place it in the refrigerator to let it set and chill for an additional hour. Then of course I'll show you what it looks like when I cut into them. Okay, here it is. It's been about an hour and a half, 30 minutes to let it cool, an hour in the refrigerator to set and chill. It's nice and cool, and we're ready to cut into this. So I'm going to just show you actually how easy it is to remove it out of the parchment paper, but let me show you what the edge of the pumpkin pie bars look like. Look at that. See the pumpkin in the middle, and then the crust in the bottom and the crumble on the top. But look how easy it is to remove the parchment paper. So I'm going to just discard that, and we're ready to cut into the pumpkin pie bars. And I'm going to use a serrated knife. I just find it so much easier to cut these bars with a serrated knife. So normally I'll get about 12 pumpkin pie bars out of this recipe. And that all depends on how big or small you cut the squares. Now here's the pumpkin pie bar with the crumble on the top, the crust in the bottom, and the pumpkin pie filling in the center. It's a mouth-watering dessert. And there you have it, everyone. That's how you make my pumpkin pie bars. The crust, the filling. I love them when they're chilled, but you can serve them at room temperature. You can also pre-make them a couple days before. They're simple, delicious, and easy to make. So I hope you all enjoyed the recipe for my pumpkin pie bars. And if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Take care.